Hi everyone, this is Clint from Persuasive Evangelism, and today I'm going to go over this book, The Eye of the Beholder by Lydia McGrew. How I discovered Lydia McGrew, I'm at the lake right now, is one of the, I came back to Christ about 4 or 5 years ago, and one of the things that helped bring me back through Jesus is just the apologetics, the defense of the Christian faith. Like, what are Christians' answers for the tough questions? Like, how does God and science go together? Is there evidence for Jesus? Is there evidence of him dying and rising from the dead? What is the evidence, about the Bible? How old are the copies of the New Testament do we have, and how many copies? And just all, and God, like in Genesis, how does that work? And God created the heavens and the earth, and all that. So I discovered just all these passionate Christians, and what helped bring me back was the intelligence and passion of them and their answers. Like David Limbaugh, how he wrote a book called Jesus on Trial, and the evidence that brought him to faith as a adult, and when he was an adult later on in life. So the last couple of years, I've been hearing about undesigned coincidences in the Bible that help just bring evidence of that the legitimacy and accuracy of the Bible. And I kept hearing, like, from J. Warner Wallace. He was an atheist. He was a LA cold case detective, and he would look at old eyewitness testimonies and just analyze it and look for the details to solve the murder cases. And then he analyzed using the same method for the Gospels, the 4 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and John. And he saw that it was very similar to eyewitness testimonies. They had undesigned coincidences and all these details that helped bring him to faith. An undesigned coincidence, it says in the book, undesigned coincidences are casual interlocking between reports that provide evidence for the truth of multiple reports. So, like there might be a murder, and then several people witness it, and they give different details, and then with the details you can connect it and get the full picture. So one undesigned coincidence that J. Warner Wallace says is in one of the Gospels, when the Jewish authorities capture Jesus, it says they tie him up and they start hitting him, and they start taunting him, saying, who's hitting you right now? But that it doesn't explain, like, why wouldn't Jesus know? He's just tied up. Why can't he see who hits him? But in another gospel, it talks about the same event and mentions that he was also blindfolded. So it kind of connects both of them together. Another undesigned coincidence, I believe, when Jesus feeds the 5,000, it mentions the area he's in. It says the grass was green, and people are coming and going. And it doesn't give any reason why it said that the grass was green, and why people were coming and going. But there was, in another gospel, it explains the same event and mentions it was near this Jewish holiday, which I believe was in spring, when the grass was green in that area. And also that would explain why people were coming and going, getting ready for that Jewish holiday. So those are different types of undesigned coincidences, and there's a whole bunch of them. So I started hearing about them, and then I think I saw an interview of Lydia McGrew on YouTube, and talking about undesigned coincidences and mentioning that she had written a book about it. So I ordered it right away. It's called Hidden in Plain View, and it just goes into detail on all the undesigned coincidences in the Gospels. And I think she mentioned in that book, she didn't even go over all of them because there's so many of them. So if you're going to read one of her books, I recommend reading that one first. That should be a required reading for apologetics, Christian evidence for the Gospels and so on. But so then I got this book, The Eye of the Beholder, and it's about the Gospel of John. And it says the Gospel of John is historical reportage, so she gives positive evidence for that. So this isn't a light read. It's really thick and really in depth. And I didn't know that there was there's people criticize the Bible all the time. So, how do Christians respond to the criticism? So talks about the criticism about the Gospel of John, saying, did John actually write it? Did someone else? Or, is this section accurate, and so on. So she goes through it all in detail. And what I like about it is the details of it, but also some of the criticism, they go into these like rabbit holes, and what she uses is positive evidence, and as well as common sense and just looking at the full picture, which, some of those like rabbit holes, like take a step back and look at the whole picture and use some common sense. But some of the and each chapter, like one's called John the Beloved Disciple, but I like at the end of each chapter, some of the chapters are pretty long. She does a summary, so there's bullet points on what you went over. So once you go through, it's easy then to just go read through the bullet points just to remember what you went through. And just for John as historical reportage, that he's basically reporting what he saw. There's a great deal of external evidence that John is a fully historical genre rather than partially or wholly non-historical genre. The narrator's statement of intentions in John's gospel are significant evidence that he and his original audience did not consider the gospel to be even a partially non-historical genre. They believed it was the truth. John's emphasis on precise locations and topography and evidence of his historical intention and the confirmation of many of these specific facts, including relatively obscure ones, show his accuracy. The fourth gospel gets numerous small matters of custom and culture right that would be difficult to get right for someone who was not knowledgeable or who felt free to change the facts. The evidence of name statistics strongly support the historicity of the fourth gospel. Like the names that are used are the same names that were common at that time. Some of the like gospels that aren't in the Bible that were written like hundreds of years after the event that when Jesus lived, they don't have the same names or the same names of cities, because history's changed and they didn't have the internet to go on and say, oh, what's going on there. So they had the correct names and locations, so someone that wrote it knew the area at that time. There's no sections in the gospel that do not look like history. And then one of the like in archaeology, one of the things that I like that helped just shows how accurate John was about the pool of Bethesda. He mentions that there's 5 columns, porticos, but people were saying, like, people thinking, how could that be? Because there's probably just one on each corner. But it says here, as Morris and Bachman note, the specificity of John's locations in Jerusalem is also striking. Jesus argues with the crowd and performs miracles not merely somewhere or other in Jerusalem, just general. They just didn't say, oh, in Jerusalem, but he does. But at the pool of Bethesda, near the sheep gate, or in Solomon's porch. He does not just send the blind man to wash somewhere, but specifically to wash in the pool of Siloam, John 9:7. The pool of Siloam was located by archaeologists in 2004. Fed by Gihon Springs, its living waters could even have made it suitable for ritual bathing place. And then when John talked about the pool of Bethesda, in the 20th century, they just because they mentioned that there's those 4 columns. In the 20th century, they dug up that pool and found that there were actually 5 columns, because before they actually dug it up, people were saying, well, maybe it just symbolizes the first 5 books of the Bible or something. But it says that they found the 4 columns, one on each corner, and then there was the 5th one in the middle. So that just shows how accurate, because that whole area was destroyed in 70 AD when the Romans destroyed and burned down the temple and basically destroyed Jerusalem, and killed the Jewish people, enslaved them, and the others were dispersed across the Roman Empire. But so the person that wrote John had knowledge of Jerusalem before 70 AD, before it was wiped out in detail. So this is a good book. It's not an easy read, but if you really want to get into the details, what I like about it, I think Lydia mentions where, the first few chapters are the valleys of objections, where she counters objections with positive facts, and common sense. And then you get to the peaks of the positive evidence. So this is a good book if you really want to get into details about John and the criticisms and the counter arguments and the positive evidence for the accuracy of John. So, The Eye of the Beholder by Lydia McGrew. Thanks, everyone. Goodbye. God bless.